Week 3 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I look to start this week. The first guy, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, he was good last season in his first year as the full-time starter for the Eagles, and so far this year in the first 2 weeks, he's put up monster ball games. Week 1 at Detroit, 243 pass yards, 90 rush yards, and a touchdown. And then Week 2 versus Minnesota on Monday Night Football, 333 pass yards, a touchdown, interception, 57 yards rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. So right here, he's a dual threat. And so far, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football. And right here in Week 3, he's got a good matchup at the Washington Commanders that we've seen give up a lot of points over the first 2 weeks of the season, giving up over 20 points to Jacksonville in Week 1. And then the Detroit Lions scoring 36 points on them in Week 2. So right here, I like a lot of Eagles this week to have good fantasy weeks here. Jalen Hurts, he's definitely playing like a top 5 fantasy quarterback so far in the early going. And I got confidence with this matchup and his schedule for the most part this season. He has a lot of favorable matchups, and this is definitely one of them this week. The next guy, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow and the Bengals off to a slow start and maybe a Super Bowl hangover after getting through a lot of tough teams to make it to the Super Bowl and falling short last season to the Los Angeles Rams. So far in the early going for Burrow, Week 1 versus the Steelers, 338 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions with 6 rush attempts for 47 yards, a 2-point conversion, and a fumble loss. So it was a mixed bag of results in that one with a lot of turnovers. And then Week 2 with Dallas, a mediocre ball game to pour with 199 pass yards and a touchdown with 26 rushing yards. But right here, Week 3 at the New York Jets, I think this Cincinnati Bengal team gets back on track. I know the Jets had a great victory coming back from 2 touchdowns under 2 minutes in that ball game versus the Cleveland Browns. But right here, that was a fluky victory. The defense still gave up a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns in that game. And I think Burrow and this Bengal team gets back on track versus the Jets. I think he's going to throw a lot. And I don't think the Jets could stop their wide receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this week. So Burrow, he'll get back going this week here. And he's a quarterback I would start. The next quarterback's Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks, top 3, I believe, this season. He'll finish when it's all said and done at the quarterback's position. And so far, he's off to a great start. Week 1 versus Vegas, 279 pass yards and 3 touchdowns with 4 rush attempts for 1 yard in that game. And then Week 2 at Kansas City in a tough game that they lost the lead was the Chargers. And Herbert had a little bit of a rib injury. He finished it, though, 334 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, and then in throwing 1 rushing yard. So Week 3 here, back at home in SoFi Stadium is this Charger team with a great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Even though we saw the Jaguars shut down the Indianapolis Colts, shut them out in that one 24-0 in Week 2. I think Herbert and this team gets back on track. And if Keenan Allen could come back in this ball game as well here in Week 3 after missing Week 2's ball game, that's just another monster weapon to add back into the starting lineup here for the Chargers. So right here this week, I like a lot of Chargers, and I think Herbert once again will crack 30-plus fantasy points here in Week 3. The next quarterback's Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Vikings. So Kirk Cousins, he got off to a good start in Week 1 versus the Packers. 277 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. But Week 2 at Philly, he got harassed, and that defense made a few plays with 3 interceptions, including Darius Slay with 2 of them. So in Week 2, he was force-feeding Justin Jefferson too much. And I think he forgot a lot about Adam Thielen. But Irv Smith Jr., he definitely emerged with a good ball game in Week 2 here, where he's another good Jr., he dropped a 65-yarder. It would have been for a touchdown. So he's another added weapon to the offense they didn't have last season. Adam Thielen, I think they got to target more. And if Cousins doesn't just try to force-feed Justin Jefferson and let things open up naturally, like did in Week 1, I think he has another good game here. Week 3, the Detroit Lions are coming to town, and we know their defense doesn't stop anyone. Week 1, 38 points scored by the Eagles. And then Week 2, by the Washington Commanders, 27 points scored by them. So right here, I think the Vikings get back on track in this one. It's a home game where Kirk Cousins is pretty solid at home here. And I think in this one, he could go for 250 to 275 with at least 2 touchdowns in this one. And he's a quarterback I would start this week. Final quarterback I would look to start Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Derek Carr, he's been off to a pretty good start here in the first 2 weeks of the season. Not monster fantasy games, but very serviceable and productive fantasy games here for him. Week 1 at the Chargers in a tough loss. 295 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So a mediocre game there. but the passing yards and touchdowns are always there for Carr, it seems like. And then week 2 versus Arizona in a ball game that they were in big time command of was this Raider team, and they blew that one as well. 252 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, and 9 rush yards. So week 3 at the Tennessee Titans, it's a pretty solid matchup, I believe, here for Derek Carr and this Raider team. The Titans, they're 0-2 as well, and something has to give in this one. So I think Derek Carr, him and Devontae Adams will get things going once again this week here, after Adams pretty much didn't do anything besides that 2-yard touchdown catch in week 2, where he only ended up with 9 fantasy points. So they'll get back on track. Tennessee, they got torched in that Monday night game at Buffalo, even though I know this offense isn't like the Buffalo Bills, but it's a good offense, I think, in Las Vegas with Waller, Devontae Adams, and Carr, who's a good quarterback. So this week here, I have him as a quarterback to start. So that's a few quarterbacks I look to start for week 3 of the fantasy football season.